The El Conservador Radio Show is sponsored by the Federation for American Immigration Reform and George Rodriguez on 9:30 a.m. The Answer. Time for the El Conservador Radio Show with George Rodriguez. George is a constitutional conservative who loves to expose fake news and liberals. And now, El Conservador, George Rodriguez.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Once again, my friends, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio on this Saturday, November the 16th, 2024. We are very, very close to Thanksgiving, a few days away, 10 days away, and I can't believe that we're so close to the end of the year. It's been a big event. We're still celebrating, my friends, for last week, the Trump election. We are very, very excited. I personally am very excited. I'm still celebrating. Anyway, let me tell you who is on our show today. We've got a good one, as usual, and we've got, I want to share some information with you, a commentary with you. However, okay, so let me tell you who is our guest. First of all, we've got Mr. Randy Clark with Breitbart. He is a Breitbart reporter on the border. And Randy is going to be chatting with us regarding what is going on in the border since the election. He's got some insight into what is going on. He is based in Eagle Pass and in Del Rio. He's going to tell us exactly what's going on. We also have Mr. Derek Maltz, retired DEA agent. He's going to be chatting with us regarding what is going on in New York City. He's a former police officer in New York as well as a retired DEA agent. He's going to be chatting about what is going on regarding the drug traffics in New York City and all over the country. Then we've got my good friend, Mr. Simon Hankinson, senior fellow with the Heritage Foundation. And he is going to be talking about what lies ahead after the Trump election as far as what needs to happen in Washington, D.C. Then we've got Joey Chester, who is the spokesperson for FAIR. He's going to give us an update of what's been going on in D.C. and across the country with the politics related to the border crisis. So those are our guests. I'm very happy that we've got them. But before we go to our first guest, let me give you some insights because my good friend Tom Homan has been named the border czar. And one of the things that he has been chatting about, my friends, one of the things that he's been explaining or attempting to explain to the liberal media because they don't listen, but he's been explaining that we have to enforce immigration laws. They have not been enforced all for the past 4 years. On the contrary, we've been rewarding people for entering the country illegally. And he's going to start enforcing the laws. Well, so the liberals are screaming and yelling. They're expressing their concerns about humanitarian issues, of course, regarding the enforcement of the laws. Well, we've got to understand, my friends, that you broke a law. These people broke the law when they entered the country illegally, and there have to be some consequences. Entering and being in the United States without permission or proper documentation is a crime. Non-citizens who enter the United States and reside in the United States without documentation or permission, they are illegal aliens. Yes, that's the word that I'm going to use, illegal aliens. That includes anyone that came in during the Biden-Harris administration, as well as any little kid that came in as a child, as a baby. You come into the country illegally, you are an illegal alien. Doesn't matter what your age, what your circumstance is. Now, we need to understand, my friends, that illegal immigration has always existed. It has always existed since the beginning of our nation. But it's never been this bad. It has never been as bad as it is now. As many as 20 million people have come in during the past 4 years. Something's got to be done, first of all, to stop the illegal immigration, to control the border, and then to remove people. That's what needs to be done. Because, my friends, if you excuse and reward and tolerate illegal immigration, guess what? You're going to get more. So how does the Trump administration plan to do this? Or what is the idea? How can it be done in an effective and humanitarian manner? Well, first of all, we've got to emphasize that there's not going to be any mass deportations. That's what the mainstream media and the liberals are saying, that there's going to be mass deportations, sweeps. Well, no, there's not going to be any. However, the first priority is going to be with anybody that's got a criminal record. All of those illegal alien criminals that are either in jails or waiting sentences, have committed a crime, have been arrested, they're going to be the first to go. They're going to be rounded up immediately. Same thing with terrorists. There is a ridiculous requirement that was placed on arresting terrorists that you could not arrest them under Biden and Harris. You couldn't arrest them unless you caught them in the act. Well, that's crazy. So terrorists and criminals, they're going to be the first ones. The second ones are going to be those people that are working without permission. Now, let's understand that people who are here in the United States and work without permission, that is a crime. That is a crime. They may be here because they need to, but that is a crime. So those folks have got to be removed. They have broken the law. They've broken two laws. They're working without permission, and they're here illegally. Third, there's going to be an effort to voluntarily to encourage people to remove themselves. That's going to be something very, very important. How do you do that? You get rid of the sanctuary communities first of all, sanctuary states, and then you stop giving them benefits, privileges, rights. Okay, that's how you encourage them to self-deport. And those persons, of course, at the end of the day that don't want to leave, you're going to have to deport them. What about separating families? No. You can deport them together. Tom Homan made that very, very clear. Freaked out the person that was asking him. So that's what's going to happen, my friends. Me, as an American of Mexican descent, I oppose illegal immigration. I support the deportation of illegal aliens. I can't say it much better than that. So, my friends, that's what needs to happen. It is a humane deportation. It is a deportation plan. It is also an effective one. It's not helter-skelter. It's not something that is thrown together where we just throw them out and push them out. No. It is an effective, humane effort, and people are encouraged. Nobody, my friends, none of these illegal aliens were forced to come. A gun was not put to their heads and told to cross the river illegally. They came across on their own volition. So, once again, my friends, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, let's go to our first guest. Howdy. Once again, my friends, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio. And we're talking to you 2 days after the big election. And I wanted to get my good friend, Mr. Randy Clark, with Breitbart. And also, he is a retired Border Patrol agent. I wanted to get him on the phone because right here at our South Texas border, he's written a couple of articles that are very, very interesting. First of all, Randy, thank you very, very much. Welcome to the show, my buddy.
Thank you for having me, George.
Let me ask you two questions about questions about two articles that you've written. The first one about the number of people, the jump in the number of people that are crossing the border again this past month, and then the other one about the number of Iranians and persons of special interest that are crossing the border still. First of all, in the wake of the Trump victory, what do you think is going to happen with the border? Do you think there's going to be more people rushing it, or do you think they're going to say, "Oh, we better surrender and leave"?
No, I think we're going to see, and we're already starting to see a little bit of a surge and a change in the posture of the Mexican government to stop people from getting to our border in the first place. So we've seen a little bit of a change, and then we've seen a shifting of traffic from parts of the West Coast towards Eagle Pass and into Texas. And that pertains to the special interest aliens and some unaccompanied minors. That's a bit of a difference, but I think we're going to see folks try and get to the border, obviously, before January the 20th. I don't know altogether that that's going to work, because I think, President-elect Trump can still have a great influence on what Mexico does between now and January the 20th, because I think just like our administration here is going to start working on a transition, I think Mexico's government is also sitting down and talking about what life is going to be like after January the 20th, because this is important for President Sheinbaum as well. There is a lot of leverage in the United States' favor when it comes to Mexico to get them to do things, to be better partners in the immigration business. And this administration coming in, the Trump administration, as I can attest to, is probably the best at using that leverage to get what they want. So I think with just a little bit of messaging, President Trump can have a big impact on Mexico getting back in the business, because I went to Mexico a few weeks ago, and areas in Piedras Negras where there were, almost permanent like military posts keeping migrants away from the river, those have mostly been abandoned, and you'll see a roving patrol every once in a while, but you won't see them stationary keeping people out of that area like they were a month ago.
Now, one of the things that's curious to me is wondering if Mexico is going to be more cooperative because they're afraid of tariffs and other actions by the Trump administration over the issue of illegal immigration.
I think so, but one thing to remember is it was going to be a different story with the Trump administration, because with the Biden administration, I think this was a temporary arrangement just to get us through the election cycle. And then we were going to open this up, and we were going to do the CBP-1 some more, and we were going to do some parole programs and really continue to keep the border open, because let's face it, we have created a system where we're not seeing them in the river. We're not seeing them in the deserts in Arizona. We're seeing them, or actually we're not seeing them at ports of entry. They're being let in the front door right now, and a significant amount, 2,400 per day. So that's going to change with the Trump administration, but Mexico is not going to be asked to shoulder this immigration problem on their own, because the administration is also going to conduct removal programs, speedy removal programs, with Northern Triangle countries and with others in the hemisphere and other parts, to make sure that this flow stops before it even starts pointing this direction. That's what we saw in late 2019 when all of the agreements finally came into being. Well, we're not going to waste that time. I think this administration, when they get on January 20th, is going to know what works and what doesn't work. It's not going to be an experimental period like we saw in the first administration when Congress failed to act, failed to give him defense money, and he had to kind of wing it. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. He's going to bring in the staff that knows how to do it.
I am so hopeful of that. All right, so let me ask the next question, because the people that are getting in are a little suspicious. Let's use that word. What did you write about that?
Well, so what we've seen is a shift from the West Coast of special interest aliens coming in. Those are aliens that the FBI has on a list, that DHS works to vet a little bit more than your average person, and they come from countries that are known to have some kind of activities or nexus to terrorism. So it's Iran, it's places in the Middle East, Northern Africa. And those are countries like Somalia that we really look at and go, hey, we got to know who this person is. Problem is we don't have a lot of databases to check. So we're seeing significant numbers of special interest aliens arriving, and that flow has shifted to Eagle Pass. I think everybody remembers what's going on with the Sinaloa cartel and the battles that they're having in Arizona. They control a lot of California and Arizona border. Sinaloa, for those who don't know, it's kind of on the center of the coast, of the western coast of Mexico. And so with that violence, these special interest aliens, a lot of them that were being seen in that area of Lukeville, Arizona, some of them are showing up Eagle Pass, Texas. And so the greater numbers there, they really pose a risk that we're not looking into to the extent that we need to, because we lack the language skills, we lack the historical criminal databases. We don't know who's coming here that's a dissident that is against the Iranian regime, which there's a significant portion of their population is, or is persons who are out to get revenge for the killing of Soleimani and what's happening in Israel and Gaza.
Wow, that is, yeah. I think the worst part of it all is that we have no intelligence on these people, and their governments are less than cooperative about providing any kind of intelligence on these folks.
Well, the good news is I think some of our posture and our ability to cope with this is going to swiftly change here in a few months.
I sure hope so. Well, tell the folks where they can follow you and where they can read your articles.
They can find work that I do on border stories and other related matter at Breitbart.com under our Cartel Chronicles page, under the World page. They can also find me on the main page there and on X at Randy Clark BDTX.
You got it. Thank you very, very much. Folks, we've been speaking with our good friend, Mr. Randy Clark, reporter at the border here in Texas with Breitbart. Randy, thank you very, very much, and we're going to get you back on as this story continues.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, George. You have a good one.
You take care, my man. Once again, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Once again, my friends, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio. And we've got our good friend, Mr. Derek Maltz, former, or retired, should I say. Derek is a retired DEA agent after 28 years. I mean, I don't know if I could take it that long. But Derek is still active, and I wanted to get his perspective, particularly in light of the re-election of President Trump and what we have been going through the past 4 years. Derek, thank you very much for taking time to be with us, buddy. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for putting out, the facts to the public, George, on a regular basis, and I appreciate having the opportunity to speak on these important issues.
All right, so tell us, first of all, what have you been seeing the past 4 years versus what you expect and hope for the next 4?
Well, George, putting politics aside, I can tell you I've seen a disaster in America the last 4 years, because I've seen leadership completely disregarding the most fundamental priority of the government, and that is to protect our citizens and keep them safe and keep families safe. And unfortunately, I've witnessed, because I get very involved with fentanyl families that have buried their young kids all around this country. I've been supporting them 7+ years. But forget about the fentanyl for a second. I've also watched the Mexican cartels build the largest ever sex trafficking, human smuggling, drug trafficking operation in the history of our country, because we're letting them do it. We've let them for 4 years to operate with impunity to cause pain and suffering to our citizens throughout this country. So, yeah, I'm a little passionate about this, because I talk to families that are burying their kids every single day. And I'm passionate about it because I've watched the government facilitate it, George. That's the key thing. It's not like they're turning their eyes. They're facilitating it by empowering the cartels and leaving our border wide open.
Now, this past week, we have been reading here in San Antonio about shootouts that have been occurring on a regular basis on the other side of the border. And I guess cartels are trying to get the upper hand on each other before whatever happens under Trump happens. Nevertheless, the danger for us is very, very real on our side of the border. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, the danger for you guys and the entire country has been on the rise for the last several years. But in regards to the shootouts, they've been doing that for a while, but it seems to be escalating now because they're trying to control the routes for the last couple of months, getting to America, because they're trying to maximize the amount of money they can make. So, yeah, it's becoming a little bit, crazier than normal, I would say. But
Yes.
So George, like I still can't get out of my mind the videos that are being put out on the social media on the drones dropping C4 explosives by the cartels, the drones that are out there invading our country. Thousands of these counter surveillance drones that are coming into America, watching our law enforcement, watching stash houses, and we're allowing this to happen. This is an invasion into our country. So I am quite excited by the election results because the president that's coming into office, President Trump, when he was in office, he kept the numbers down to all-time lows, right? As far as the invasion, he was building the wall system, as I should say. See, a lot of people don't realize it's not just the physical wall. It's the technology, the sensors, the lighting, the roads. And this administration completely dismantled that whole production. And so, yeah, I'm excited because I know that this president wants to go out and he wants to identify all these criminal aliens that are illegally here. He wants to apprehend them as soon as possible and deport them back where they came from. Yeah, I'm excited because he had the catch and release policy figured out. He stopped it because if you give them incentive that they're going to be released here on these bogus asylum claims, of course they're going to come. He also basically created the Remain in Mexico policy. We all love immigration. We all love immigrants. It makes our country great. But there has to be a process. So if you have a legitimate asylum claim and you want to come to America, you stay in Mexico or another country and you basically file the claim, and then we'll look at it. And if it's legit, which most of them, 90% of them are not legit, we'll let you in. But the thing is that this president, what he brings to the table, in my view, having been a law enforcement agent for 28 years, my father was law enforcement 30 years. We care about the country, is that he cares about the men and women on the front lines that are keeping us safe. He's going to provide resources. He's going to provide the actual attention that law enforcement needs to do their job. But this administration that's been here for 4 years, they talked about defunding the police. They treated the police like they were like criminals. And so we're very excited because we know there's good things coming to America, especially when it comes to these illegal unknowns, these ghost criminals that are all over the country. I'm looking forward to this so much, George. I can't tell you.
Yeah. Let me ask you this one last question regarding Los Angeles just defeated their George Soros DA. We know about what is going on at the border, but also in our communities, we've got a lot of these DAs that haven't lifted a finger. And like you said, they've made the police, they've made law enforcement the enemy. Do you hope that we've turned that page and hopefully we will stand for more? Particularly like in Los Angeles, that they defeated that George Soros DA, that others will be defeated, hopefully like in other big communities like here in San Antonio and in New York and in D.C.?
Yeah, well, 100%. Like this president is coming in where Americans get treated, at a top priority. It's not, the criminals shouldn't be treated ahead of Americans, right? So it's the America First policies, and those policies have already started, obviously, by the election, right? The people in America spoke out that they weren't going to be deceived. They recognized the devastation going on in this country, and their vote, sends a powerful message. But in California, for example, like I was very, very happy to hear about the results and the corruption with the folks out there that are hiring these very, very liberal, cop-hating DAs. That stuff's got to end because the criminals have to be held accountable. Right now, the criminals in America have no fear. They can come here. They can, burglarize, homes. They can break, windows on the stores. They can steal in the supermarkets. George, I'll tell you a quick story. I was in New York City last week visiting my son who just had his first baby, and his wife and him had my first grandchild, and I had to go and wait for somebody in CVS to get me Tide detergent. They locked it up.
Oh my God!
This is insane. So yeah, I do believe that the tide is going to shift very quickly because people can't tolerate it anymore. Our country has been going down the tubes. So now we're going to turn it around. We have good leadership. We have a dream team coming into office to help President Trump. I just can't believe the team he's going to put together here. It's mind-boggling when you look at the folks and the credentials that he's putting on the table as far as helping him build, like he says, make America great again. That's what we're looking forward to.
That's excellent. Derek, thank you very, very much for taking time to be with us. And we've got to get you, as things progress, we've got to get you back on the
you got it, George.
Anytime. To talk some more. All righty. Once again, my friends, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio.
The Federation for American Immigration Reform, known as FAIR, fights to restore common-sense border controls and immigration policies that work for America and its future. America's immigration system and border controls have been decimated by Washington politicians and special interests, undermining the interests and security of the American people. FAIR mobilizes grassroots activists to make sure the voices of the American people are heard in Washington. Find out more about FAIR and what we do by going to fairus.org.
Howdy, howdy, howdy once again, my friends. George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio. And we've got Mr. Joey Chester, who is the spokesperson for FAIR, our sponsor, the Federation for American Immigration Reform in Washington, D.C. And I wanted to get Joey on because, my friends, since we just got through with the election, with the presidential election, it's very interesting regarding an article that was done by FAIR regarding that they they have listed 8 states that passed amendments that prohibit anyone voting that does not have proof of citizenship. Joey, welcome to the show. Thank you for being with us this morning, buddy.
George, it's great to be with you.
Tell us about this article. Tell us about the information in this article.
Absolutely. So first off, I think that these states banning non-citizen voting is even more of a mandate for Donald Trump. So we had 8 states, Iowa, Kentucky, Missouri, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Wisconsin approved ballot measures to amend their state constitutions that makes it so only American citizens can vote in elections. And this became a really big issue over the last year as people started to realize, look, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of illegal aliens have entered the country under Biden and Harris. And what measures are put in place to actually ensure that these people don't vote and influence our elections? And then you had states like Iowa, for example, that discovered, I think it was over 2,000 non-citizens registered to vote in the state and had to purge them from the voter rolls. And Iowa wasn't the only state either. Here in Virginia, where I live, Governor Glenn Youngkin had to remove non-citizens from the voter rolls and had to go to the Supreme Court over it. So we know that it's an issue that's happening across the country. And I actually think the most concerning thing is we don't know how many non-citizens, potentially including illegal aliens, are actually registered to vote in the United States. We have no idea. And so we tried to get the SAVE Act through Congress to pass the House. Schumer ignored it in the Senate. And so that leaves it up to the states right now to take action of their own, and we had 8 states do that. But I do want to say, because President Trump was elected and he has the Senate and it looks like he's on track to also have the House, I think that the SAVE Act needs to be a priority again, and we need to ban non-citizen voting as a nationwide law. It's great that these states are taking action, but we need this in all 50 states too.
What's very interesting to me is that, outside of Wisconsin, which is a Canadian border state, the rest of them are not really border states. Very interesting on that aspect of it. Your thoughts?
It is very interesting in that aspect, but I think it just goes to show you that I know it sounds repetitive, but every state really has become a border state, especially under Biden and Harris, where you have people crossing the border and ending up all over the country. I mean, look at a place like Springfield, Ohio, for example, that has dealt with an influx of migrants. So every state has seen this influx. I also think what's interesting, too, is North Carolina elected a Democrat governor, voted for Trump as president, and then voted for this ballot initiative too. And Kentucky as well. They have a Democrat governor, but the people in the state voted for this ban on non-citizen voting. So I think that's interesting too. I think this is a overwhelmingly bipartisan position that non-citizens shouldn't vote in American elections. It is not controversial. The polling shows that most Americans like this type of legislation. American elections are for American citizens only.
Now, very interesting also, there was a study that was done that was revealed on Newsmax that showed that Kamala had won in states where voter registration or citizenship is not a requirement or not a big requirement, and those are states that she won. However, in states where there are requirements, at least two forms of ID, she did not win in those states. That seems to be very interesting to me.
It's certainly interesting, and I get back to that's why we need to figure out how many people are not registered or are non-citizens that are registered to vote. We need to remove those people from the voter rolls, and we need to make sure that people are proving their U.S. citizenship when they go to register to vote. That is key. If we get that nationwide, we bring back more election integrity. Look, there's a lot of Americans out there that are worried about the integrity of our elections, and this is the type of legislation that helps bring a little bit more comfort to that.
Well, let's talk, because this past Sunday evening, there was a big announcement that Tom Homan, the former ICE director under Trump, has been nominated or pegged to be the new border czar under the Trump administration. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, look, Tom Homan brings so much experience to the role. I do think it's a bit of a funny dig at Kamala Harris, considering she was border czar for over 3 years and was a total failure. And now we're going to get Tom Homan, who I predict will do a very good job. So it sounds like this position is going to live inside the White House. So it'll be the presidential hire. Homan will not have to go through Senate confirmation, it sounds like. And I expect he's going to have a few different priorities. I think deportations are going to be one of them, because that is something that Donald Trump has talked about during the election. And I also think that border security is going to be a huge part. And what I like about Tom, and he said this on Fox News this morning, is he has been alongside in uniform with these people protecting our borders. He has lived this. He was a career employee at these agencies. He understands what it's like. He understands the process. He knows it. And I really appreciate that. And he said, I've done the same things that I've asked people to do. He's worked among them. And that, I think, is something that's really cool. I think that there's going to be a huge morale boost within CBP and within ICE, because they feel that their mission is being supported again, and they're not going to be demoralized, and they're not going to be, as someone recently said to me, just travel agents for illegal aliens. And so I predict that Tom Homan is going to work hand in hand with Donald Trump to secure our borders and beef up interior enforcement in the country.
I think that's exciting. I really do. I mean, I know the gentleman. I think that I agree 100% with you. Joey, is there anything else that you want to add before we let you go, buddy?
Well, I just want to say that the American people gave President Trump a mandate, and that's clear, an overwhelming mandate. They elected Republicans to lead the Senate, and it appears that the GOP is on track to take the House. And so that means that President Trump on day one needs to take executive action. That means restarting border wall construction, ending catch and release, ending the Biden-Harris admin's abuse of parole, shutting down the CBP One app and the CHNV parole programs where migrants fly directly into the country. country, and he needs to use that mandate to call on Congress to pass legislation like H.R. 2, the Secure the Border Act, and the SAVE Act. I would love if we don't just have to rely on executive action, and that we can actually see legislation move through Congress that helps fix our borders permanently, and that also helps prevent a future open borders administration from changing as much if we actually have that legislative action. So I'm excited to see what happens, and I have high hopes.
Amen, buddy. Thank you very much. Folks, we've been speaking with our good friend, Mr. Joey Chester from the Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR, in Washington, D.C. Thank you very, very much, my man.
Thank you, George. Take care.
Once again, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Once again, my friends, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio. And we've got our good friend, Mr. Simon Hankinson, Senior Fellow at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C. I wanted to get him on because, my friends, he has written an article very recently about the Tren de Aragua gang, which has been very active here in the San Antonio area, although our leaders sometimes try to play it down, but they've been very, very active here. And ask him about, in the wake of the Trump victory, we are recording this on Wednesday, the day after the election, and I wanted to get his view on how important was the immigration issue in this election. Simon, thank you for taking time to be with us. Welcome to the show.
It's always a pleasure to be with you.
So talk to us. Tell us, what are your thoughts about what's been happening with the border, what's been happening with Tren de Aragua, and what has happened now with the election?
Wow, that's a lot of questions.
Yes, it is.
And I don't know about you, but I was up pretty late last night, trying to figure out what was going on, and woke up this morning pleasantly surprised, at least, to see that there hadn't been a midnight upset, and all the things that we thought were happening were not happening. But look, this gang Tren de Aragua is it's not the first in the United States. We have our own homegrown gangs, but we've also had gangs like MS-13 and a whole series of Mexican transnational criminal organizations or cartels or gangs, whatever you want to call them. But they are the latest and in many ways the worst. And the sheer numbers that they've been able to get into this country are really extraordinary, because they've had not just sneaking across the border, the so-called gotaways, where they don't get arrested or even seen, except maybe on a camera or from a distance. But they've also been let in on purpose by the Biden administration on parole programs. There's a special $30,000 a month for Cubans, Haitians, Venezuelans, Nicaraguans. They've also been allowed in using CBP-1, where they just show up at the border after kind of booking their illegal entry. And still others have just shown up at the border, been technically arrested by Border Patrol, and then almost immediately released with a notice to appear in court, down the line. So it's like, and then they've had temporary protected status on top of that in case they came in as gotaways. So you've got a whole series of ways in which Tren de Aragua can move manpower into the United States. And you're seeing that in cities from Houston and San Antonio and El Paso and Texas to New York City, right on the other side in Boston of the country, they are moving in and starting to make a living the same way they did back home in Venezuela, which is to say robbing people, selling drugs, and committing other crimes.
Now, this situation that we've got now with the incoming Trump administration, if you had a wish list, what would you hope that is done in order to address the problem? Because we've got millions of illegal aliens now in the city, in the country. How are we going to address this issue?
It really is so simple to explain. You're going to read all kinds of craziness in the papers and on the media about, this unprecedented mass, this and that, and it's going to be painted as a departure from the norms. But in fact, all we need is a return to the norms, to the rule of law, and to law enforcement. We've seen in cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles, where they just booted out San Francisco booted out their Soros prosecutor, Chesa Boudin, I think, a year or two ago. And George Gaskin, the rogue prosecutor who doesn't like to prosecute in Los Angeles, just lost his re-election bid because people don't like when criminals get to commit crimes and they don't get prosecuted and put in jail to keep the rest of us safe. And it's the same with immigration. No one is asking to go out there and enforce things that aren't already laws. We're not asking to create a whole new system of immigration. Obviously, we need some reforms and adjustments. We're just asking for the laws that are on the books right now that previous presidents, including Barack Obama and Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton, were willing to enforce, to do their constitutional duty to enforce the laws. There's 1.3 at least million foreign nationals with removal orders right now. In other words, deportation orders by a judge after due process. They're still in the country. There's 435,000 roughly illegal aliens who have criminal convictions in the United States, and another 250,000 odd who are in the pipeline with charges against them. Why are those people still here? Why are they out risking our lives and the lives of our families instead of back in their home countries risking those people's lives? So it's really just a question of going back to the rule of law and law enforcement, and I sincerely hope that's what happens.
Now, you served as a foreign officer. What are your thoughts as far as the national security issues of America that we've been compromised, in my opinion, for the past 3 years? Do you think that the danger is going to be now more so that they know that the government may come after them?
You're talking about with your relations with other countries, or with?
Well, the people know that I'm referring to the people on terrorist watch list that have gotten into the United States. What how can they become even a greater danger now that they know that they might be removed?
I would suspect that they're going to try to hide and lie low. If they think that law enforcement is actually going to do its job, and ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, is going to be allowed to do its job and find and detain and then eventually deport people who are risks to the United States of terrorism or crime, that they'll probably lie low. You never know. We had that Afghan who was paroled into the country, I believe, who was planning a terrorist attack for November 5th. There have been other plots foiled, and there have been other people who are on the terrorist watch list found at the ports of entry. But I would hope that the word will get out that you can't hide forever. You can run, but you can't hide, as the FBI used to say, and that people will understand that there will be consequences for illegal activity, and that if you don't have the right, the legal ability to enter this country, if you are ineligible because of terrorist affiliation or criminal record, that we will actually take that seriously and remove you from this country as opposed to just letting you live your life, which is what we've been doing.
It's a new morning in America, so to speak, and we've got lots of hopes that things will be reversed. Anything else that you'd like to share with us before we let you go, buddy?
I feel optimistic if you're someone like me who's been really frustrated by the complete disinterest or lack of interest in enforcing the rules in the rule of law over the past 4 years. I think you should be a little bit optimistic. I was, like you said, a foreign service officer. I started with President Clinton, then President Bush. So I've had Republican presidents, Democratic presidents. I always just did my job. I followed the law. I issued visas to people when they were qualified, and I didn't when they weren't. And that's all I've ever wanted to see. We can argue over policy, how many people come in, what conditions, whether they get to stay, whether they get to work. But what we should never argue about as Americans is that you have to enforce the laws that are on the books. You can't just blow them off and ignore them because you don't like them. And to me, that's something I really look forward to seeing reestablished. And I sincerely hope that in a future Democratic administration, and there will be one, that they take that line too, and that they enforce the laws that Congress passed and don't try to get around them with executive orders.
You got it. Thank you very much for spending some time with us, Simon. Folks, we've been speaking with our good friend, Mr. Simon Hankinson, senior research fellow on border security and immigration at the Heritage Institute. Simon, thank you very much, and I'm sure we're going to get you back on sometime soon to talk more about this issue.
I certainly hope so. Have a great day.
You got it. George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio. Once again, my friends, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio. I want to thank our guests this evening, or this afternoon, should I say. Our guests, Randy Clark, Breitbart reporter, Derek Maltz, a very good friend, a retired DEA agent, Joey Chester from FAIR, and Simon Hankinson, from a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C. I really want to thank these folks for joining us today and for providing us their insight. Before we let you go, my friends, I wanted to share another thought, another part, a piece of information with you. Try to educate the public regarding this whole issue about jobs that Americans won't do. One of the biggest excuses for illegal immigration, for illegal alien employment, is that there are jobs that Americans won't do. That's the favorite phrase. Well, let me explain to you, my friends. In 1983, 1984, I did a review, an investigation, a report on the jobs in California, specifically the agricultural jobs that illegal aliens were doing. This was in prelude to the 1986 Immigration Act, and I did this investigation, this study. I went out and talked to growers, agricultural owners, as well as I talked to illegal aliens themselves. I talked to folks in the communities. And here's what I found, my friends, regarding the jobs that Americans won't do. First of all, many Americans were not doing the jobs because they had to compete with illegal aliens. Okay? And illegal aliens did it cheaper. Okay? They did it cheaper. That's a key word. That's number one. Removing illegal aliens would help, but still, the job was paying a lot less than other jobs, than jobs comparable. And so what needs to happen in that aspect of it, number one, you need to remove the illegal aliens. And number two, you need to raise the wages. You need to improve the conditions of the work. This is hard work. There is hard work that's done in the agricultural industry as well as other industries. The canneries, the meat processing. All of these jobs, my friends, are difficult, hard, and there are poor working conditions. So Americans aren't going to do that. Now, why aren't Americans going to do this? Here's the third one. We've already talked about the cheap labor competition. We've talked about the low wages and poor conditions. Well, then there is the issue that no one talks about, and that is lower welfare benefits. Lower welfare benefits. Welfare benefits for Americans, my friends, in those situations, back when I did the study, the welfare benefits for Americans were equal to the low wages that were paid for the jobs. They were equal to low-paying jobs. Now, all you have to do is just ask yourself, why would someone want to do hard work when they could make the same amount of money playing the welfare system, and not work? You think about that. Think about that. Why would you want to, why would an American want to do a hard, laborious job if they can get welfare and get the same amount of money? It's not a lot of money, but it's a living. They could live off of it. And many of them also took on other small jobs, odd jobs off the wage grid, without welfare system knowing about it, and they made a good living. So again, my friends, why won't Americans do the jobs? Because, first of all, the market is flooded with illegal aliens. Secondly, the wages are low and the working conditions are poor. And then thirdly, the welfare benefits are good. The welfare benefits are equal to or higher than the wage that they would get working hard. So if we're going to address the issue of jobs that Americans won't do, we're going to have to address it including the welfare benefit issue. Unless the welfare benefits are lowered and the working conditions and wages are raised, Americans are not going to do those jobs. There's got to be an incentive for them to do it. There's got to be an incentive. So that's my closing comment, my friends. That's my closing remark because, my friends, we are going to have a very, very strong, hard discussion from the Chamber of Commerce, opposition from the Chamber of Commerce about the need for foreign workers. That's exactly what we're going to hear. And if foreign workers are needed, my friends, in the end, okay, then they have to be registered. And somebody's got to be responsible for them. The employer has got to be completely responsible for them. My friends, once again, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio. Thank you for being with us. I hope that you will join us again. I want to thank our sponsor, FAIR, the Federation for American Immigration Reform. If you want to know anything about what is going on with public policy, the politics in Washington, D.C., go to fairus.org, fairus.org. And, of course, donate to FAIR. A donation to FAIR is a donation to El Conservador. So, my friends, until next week, George Rodriguez, El Conservador, talking to you from San Antonio.
The Federation for American Immigration Reform, known as FAIR, fights to restore common-sense border controls and immigration policies that work for America and its future. America's immigration system and border controls have been decimated by Washington politicians and special interests, undermining the interests and security of the American people. FAIR mobilizes grassroots activists to make sure the voices of the American people are heard in Washington. Find out more about FAIR and what we do by going to fairus.org.